BYU sports are entering one of the most exciting eras in their history. Today, we'll be breaking down pretty much every single reason why the future of the Cougars is not just bright, but really brighter than it's ever been, in my opinion. And, from the rise of BYU football under Kalani Sitake to Utah's recruiting explosion to new young star quarterback Barrett Bachmeier, all the way to Kevin Young's NBA powered transformation of the basketball program and an incoming wave of, elite talent that is coming into Provo to play some football, play some basketball, just everything. All BYU athletics. So if there's any BYU fans here, please watch this video and please let me know what you think because I want as much feedback as possible. Because I love the BYU fans. I'm not gonna lie. I love BYU. This is one spot that I'm 100% planning on coming to some games next year. I really want to travel over to Utah. I'm in Georgia, by the way. So BYU fans have always been great to me. And I mean, so far, it seems like they're the nicest people. The BYU fans I've been around have been the coolest people that I've ever met in really any sports, out of any sports fandoms that I've ever been around. So, BYU fans, I'd love if you open me or welcome me with open arms. And like I said, just please give me some feedback on this because I think that you guys have one of the brighter futures in all of college sports throughout all your programs, not just football. So we'll be getting into the reasons right now. Sorry, I'm stuttering. I've been sick all last week, so I'm I lost my voice. I'm just now getting my voice back. But anyway, let's get into it. No more rambling. Let's get into it. So first off, BYU, fairly recently you joined the Big 12 conference. So joining the Big 12 conference has changed everything. Now what changes from that? BYU can recruit Power 5 level athletes when in other conferences, say if you were a group of 5 conference, you're probably not recruiting these 4 and 5 stars that you're starting to see now. You know, BYU plays in major TV windows across the whole country. And it's similar to a school like Notre Dame. So there's BYU fans everywhere. I'm in Georgia. I see BYU license plates riding around pretty often, like more often than what you would think. Really, anywhere that I go, you see something BYU. And I don't think many people really pay attention to that. But if you pay attention to that, you'll probably start to see it. You see a lot of BYU, kind of like you see a lot of Notre Dame. But anyway, they face ranked competition pretty regularly in all of sports, like all their sports programs, football, basketball, baseball, everything. And recruits are starting to see a clear path to the NFL, to the NBA, to the MLB. You're starting to see the growth through all the different sports, and you're starting to see them playing the pros pretty often, more often than not, actually. So, now BYU's landing faster receivers capable of stretching the field, versatile defenders built for modern football, um, bigger athletic linemen that you really need in the Big 12 now. Transfer portal players from the SEC and Big 10 schools. Kalani Sitake's been killing it in the transfer portal for the football team. Kevin Young's killed it in the transfer portal for the basketball team. In football, you're seeing higher ranked school recruits that are in the area, really in the area. And this is the deepest and the most athletic BYU's roster building effort is that we've seen in a long time because I've always kept up with BYU. So I kind of understand it and you really see the growth now, especially from an outside perspective. So one of the main things, and it's crucial in college sports today, is great NIL and booster backing, and BYU's shown to have that with the LDS Church and great boosters in the program, such as I know Crumble Cookie CEO. I know he's heavily involved. He was, I believe, a big key in retaining Kalani Sitake when Penn State made that run after him, and some other big boosters as well. I've been seeing some on Twitter. I can't remember. There's one. I can't remember his name. He owns something in Utah, and it's like really big. Apparently, he's a super big booster for BYU at the program. I heard he was a big part in getting AJ Dybansta for the basketball program. BYU fans will probably know who I'm talking about, so leave that in the comments as well. But Anyway, now at head coach, you got your guy locked down. Penn State went chasing after him for I think it was about a week ago now, and you were able to retain him. Penn State is, I think it's undeniable. Penn State is the bigger and more premier job as far as like the whole perspective of college football and history. And great job by retaining him because Coach Kalani fit BYU mold better than anybody else could, in my opinion. I think it's gonna be hard to replace a guy that fits the culture of BYU like Kalani Sitake does. So I do think that was a great job at keeping him inside the program, not letting him go elsewhere. Pay him what you have to, and he's also just a great coach. Kalani's created a program where relationships, trust, development, they're all just as important as winning. And I've played high school football. If you're in a toxic locker room, because I've been in a toxic locker room and I've been in a cool locker room, it the really the relationships that you have with your teammates, the trust that you have in your team and coaches, and the development. It is massive for obvious reasons, and it translates over to the field because when we were in a toxic locker room in my high school, we we didn't win many games. When that locker room got straight, we started winning games. I mean, just like that. You just play better football when the locker room has their head on straight, and Kalani's Taki's good at keeping these guys' heads straight. So under his leadership, BYU has modernized the Big 12 style that works with the modern day football because as time goes, the schemes change, and we see it. That's why if you look at the NFL, look at most successful teams, they all have young coaches. These young coaches come in and implement modern style football, modern style schemes, and it really works. You see Sean McVay, he changed that, and that's why the Sean McVay coaching tree in the NFL is very good. And Kalani Sitake's doing that. Him and his staff, they're doing a great job at doing that. I know that don't make much sense, but I'll have to deeply explain that a little bit more later. But anyways, upgrading strength and conditioning, actively using the transfer portal, like I said, recruiting nationally and really locally, supporting players through NIL has been massive for them, such as some of the recruits that we'll talk about in just a minute. This isn't just building a roster. Sataki's really building a sustainable foundation, I would say. And that's why BYU's trajectory is so much different now than what you did see just a few years ago before they joined the Big 12. And, coming off a season where this big money roster really, it's still a few years away. This big money roster is not what you're seeing on the field yet. This is this is still kind of your transitioning year into that roster that you really paid a lot of money for, outside of some of the portal additions like LJ Martin and some other guys. Bear Bachmeyer being one probably. But anyway, um, you finished the season with two losses. And like I said, you're still in that transition period. And your only two losses are to the number four team in the country. And that number four team in the country has the highest NIL budget in the country. They have the most expensive roster in the country, I believe. And, BYU has an arguable cause to even be in the college football playoffs this year. I believe that, yeah, I think they were snubbed. I think BYU should have got in along with some other teams this year. The selection day was actually today, the college football playoff selection. I was rooting for BYU to get in, and they unfortunately didn't. But I think they'll be in next year. I think BYU has a bright future. That's why we're making this video. But anyways, BYU they secured Bear Bachmeyer, who everybody knows, all the BYU fans know him. Um, this past offseason, and he's been absolutely awesome as a true freshman quarterback. He's my favorite quarterback in the country. I love the way he plays. He's another highly talented quarterback with, I think he has major upside. I think there's still a lot to showcase there. He comes in with leadership. His arm talent's really good. He's poised, super poised, especially to be a true freshman. You don't really see many true freshmen come in and just have no worries to their game at all. Like Bear Bachmeyer is hard to rattle the kid. He doesn't get nervous. We saw him multiple times this year come back from big deficits, come back and helps them win the game. That's what you want. And he's only going to get better. He's like what, 17 or 18? He's super young. I can't remember his exact age. Super young, true freshman, bright future. Love the kid. Plays like a linebacker as well. Looks like a linebacker. He's huge. But yeah, I think his future is bright, and you still have a few good more years in him. And I expect him to be one of the top quarterbacks in the country within the next year or two, honestly. I think because if you think back, he didn't even get a full summer camp with the team. Imagine him with a full summer camp or spring camp or whatever. Um, so yeah, I think the future with him is pretty bright as long as you have him under center. So as far as recruiting, BYU went out and got one of the biggest recruits in BYU history in Ryder Lyons. He's a five-star quarterback. I don't care what 247 says. He was a five-star a lot in this process. They bumped him down to four when he committed to BYU. We see that a lot in the recruiting cycle. I don't know why it's a thing, but it is, unfortunately. Ryder's a five-star in my eyes, and I think everybody else in the country has him as a five-star, but 247 has him as a four-star. Five-star, though. He's five-star. But anyways, he's one of the highest rated recruits that BYU's ever landed in school history. You know, here's how big this is. He's the number five ranked quarterback in 2026. In my opinion, he should be higher. He's number 19 overall recruit in the entire 2026 recruiting class. I'm looking at some recruiting rankings right now, by the way. According to ABC Sport or CBS Sports, he's the highest rated recruit that BYU's landed in the 247 sports era. So kind of what I was saying is he's probably the biggest recruit that you've ever gotten in school history or one of them. Um, he brings a rare combo. He has good arm strength, really good deep ball accuracy. He's a dual threat quarterback. He's another one. He's a bigger guy. BYU likes to recruit these bigger quarterbacks, dangerous with his legs, very high ceiling, high character. He's gonna bring the vibes to the locker room. You see him do his TikToks and stuff. I know some people don't like that, but the kid means no bad. I mean, if you go watch his documentaries and stuff on YouTube, the kid's awesome, and he seems like a great kid. But anyway, he's also already playing in a college style offense, which I don't really hear anybody talk about when talking about Ryder, but I have noticed that he is playing in a college style offense already at his current school in Folsom High School, who is actually going to play for another state championship next week. Um, he will spend a few years under Bear Bachmeier, but I think the transition from high school to the college level will come fairly quick, being that you already kind of are learning that college style system. Yeah, you're not playing against the college style or the college actual recruits and stuff, like the college caliber players. But still, as long as you can get that system down, is the quicker you're going to translate. Because some kids, I see it a lot in high school football because I watch a lot of high school football. They run straight high school style systems and they struggle to really come over to college and adapt to that new system. So I think that's one big thing that Ryder has that's going to help him a lot pretty early in his career. I think long term, he's going to be great. I think short term, you're also going to see very high productivity from the very start. So he is planning to serve a 1 year mission, which I do think a lot of BYU fans will support that, definitely. That's before he enrolls, also. I believe he graduated early. He's serving his mission in Orlando, Florida, which is like 3 hours from me. So I don't think he'll be on campus until 2027. I could be wrong. If anybody knows that, let me know. But make no mistake, when he gets to Provo, he's viewed as one of the potential future stars and long-term leader of BYU's offense. Everybody's going to be praising him from the start. And Ryder isn't alone in this 2026 class. It's pretty loaded. I don't have many names. I'm not going to sit here and name off too many names, but I will do a separate video on BYU's recruiting class. But they have a lot of other high-level prospects coming in as well. Brock Harris being one of them. He's a four-star tight end from St. George, Utah, so another in-state kid. Four-star offensive lineman, another one who is an in-state kid. He's one of the Samoan kids. So he just went out and flipped the Pula twin from Lone Peak, another in-state high school. And if you even look at it, their offers and stuff, they're even going after some more fun names who are really good players as well. On the radar. Like they're not committed yet, but one comes to mind is Diesel Dart. BYU seems to be making a run after him. His really pretty heavily in his recruitment. It seems like they're the top school as of now, but still super early because he's not a senior quite yet. He's still a few classes away. Anyways, he's the brother of Jackson Dart. I think everybody knows that. He's really starting to pick up steam. A lot of people are starting to recognize him now. He has some SEC offers, but I do think BYU I think it's up there. I think it's up there towards the top of his list. If I had to guess, I don't know, but if I had to guess. He's a three-star athlete right now. Likely going to be adding that four-star once his senior year starts to roll around. You see some lagging stars in a lot of these guys' recruitments, and that has nothing to do with their play. It's just like I don't really know why they do it like that, but you will start to see those stars add up. He'll hit a four-star. Like I'm pretty sure he's going to hit a four-star. He's one of the top rated players in Utah already. And I wouldn't even be surprised if he gets his fifth star before he even makes a commitment or after he commits. Probably, I would guess next year, I would think. But anyways, he's a super versatile athlete. He can play safety, play receiver, super fun player, brings the vibes, brings the energy, which always great. He plays at Corner Canyon right now, so another local kid in Utah, and they're great at developing talent over at Corner Canyon. So if you can go out and land Diesel Dart, that's massive. Um, anyways, back to the more recruiting stuff. You have multiple top 100 and top tier in-state recruits because they recruit the state of Utah very heavily, and this is all in the same class, by the way. We don't really see much from 2027 class yet, other than Diesel, I believe, is in the 2027 class, but he's not yet committed. I just think if I had to make an early guess, seems like it would be Utah or BYU, being he is in Utah, but I don't know. We'll see. But anyways, it means Sataki's program is just attracting one or two more marquee names because I don't think they're done. I don't think they're done quite yet. Now, Utah football, while we're on that topic, I've watched a lot of it this year. Utah is exploding as one of the really football recruiting hotbeds in the U.S., it seems like. I think it's super slept on. A lot of people just kind of kick it to the curb. I think it's completely wrong. I think there's some deep talent in Utah, and you really see that when you look at the talent that BYU is recruiting now, and even the Utah Utes are recruiting, which I know BYU fans hate the Utes, but they do recruit some good talent in state as well for obvious reasons. But schools like Corner Canyon, Lone Peak, and plenty more. Corner Canyon, they're actually going to be playing for the first ever college national championship against Freight or St. Francis in Baltimore, which is huge for one Utah football, two high school football in general. So that's going to be super cool to see. I believe it will be on ESPN. Um, Utah high school football is producing more top tier high school talent than ever. Lots of 4 and 5 star and elite level athletes you're starting to see from Utah. Hillman Kasuga at Corner Canyon. He's going over to play quarterback at Texas A&M. I mean, I can name a lot of players if I just sat here and thought of it. There's some deep talent, especially at Corner Canyon. Like they developed Jackson Dart, Zach Wilson, Isaac Wilson. Um, I can't remember who else, but they have a pretty good history there. But anyways, back to the BYU stuff. Sorry, getting off track. Um, the population in Utah is fueling bigger, faster, and stronger players, and that's what they're doing. And I think it's a bright future for BYU because, like I said, they recruit heavily in state. Local athletes seeing BYU as a top tier Power Five option right in their backyard, I would say, is pretty big. And BYU it's a unique position to take advantage of because it's a local university. You're in the Big 12. You have that status of the Big 12. You have brand power behind you now. BYU is growing. BYU is growing massively. And um you have the cultural ties. That's why you see Kalani Sitake and you see a lot of um, Samoans coming in because there's a lot of Samoans in that Utah area, and Kalani Sitake he fits there. He fits that vibe, so he can recruit those guys pretty heavily, and he has pretty good success doing so. And so, when the Stars in Utah want to come play big time football, but they want to stay close to home, they're right there. If you live in Salt Lake City or Draper or anywhere, you're like just right down the road pretty much from both BYU and Utah, being Salt Lake City and Provo. So BYU seems to be, I mean, yeah, you're gonna have those recruiting battles with the Utah Utes in state, which I mean, it's gonna happen. But BYU seem to be coming up with a lot of money, and they seem to be winning a lot of these battles. So, anyways, that means BYU isn't really, they're not building for a few impact players to be flashy. They're building a roster really capable of sustaining high level performance for years. And I think that these next few recruiting classes after this one, as you see more money and success come into the program, it's gonna be massive. And I think that they'll be in this top 25 range for a long time and recruiting wise. So this depth is crucial as for competing in the Big 12 where injuries, turnover, and all that stuff is going to happen when you're playing bigger, more physical football. And you've seen them attack the transfer portal pretty heavily. I think they'll attack it again this year and really solidify themselves with that real depth and with that real the starters that you want to see to go out and try and win a national championship or at least be real contenders next year or as early as next year. Because Kalani Sitake, he's found some hidden gems in the transfer portal. You've seen LJ Martin, you've seen Bear Bachmeier, and several others on the defensive side. They played great defense this year. So that's it, kind of what I have for BYU football. We'll get into basketball now. Okay, so one of the biggest hires, we're talking basketball now. One of the biggest hires in recent memory for BYU is Kevin Young. He's transforming this basketball program in massive ways. He brings NBA level coaching experience because he's had several NBA roles. He was a head coach in the G League, so he brings G League head coaching experience, track record for developing pro level talent, which you gotta love as a recruit and you gotta want to go play for him because of that NBA background. And he has national credibility because that resonates with elite recruits, obviously, because like I said, all those things I just named, if you're a recruit in high school playing basketball, don't you think if he has ties and he formerly coached in the NBA and the G League and had pretty good teams there, don't you think he's probably going to run NBA style offense, NBA style, just really game plan in general, and he's probably going to produce some NBA level talent like we've already seen. But he's not just coaching college ball. He's about building a bridge to the pros, like I'm saying. And that's massive when it comes to recruiting. So because of Kevin Young, BYU's basketball program recruiting, it is hitting another gear. Talk about AJ Dybansta, one of the most highly touted high school players in the country that we've seen in a long time. He's a future NBA lottery pick in many projections. I think it's pretty much a lock now, unless something dramatic happens. But AJ Dybansta, one of the top players in the country, no doubt, argue with the wall. He's expressed he's expressed his respect for really BYU, and a big part in bringing in Dybansta was Kevin Young's presence to the NBA and that connection that Kevin Young has to the NBA. That's massive. Even if BYU didn't ever land him, the fact that they were even in conversations with the prospect at this level is huge. But Dybansta is there. Dybansta is playing for BYU now, so that is massive for them. And you got to think that other recruits are going to look around and say, okay, AJ Dybansta went there. Kevin Durant was one that told AJ Dybansta to go check out BYU. Go check out BYU because of Kevin Young. When you have guys like Kevin Durant referring you to BYU when you're looking for a school, Kevin Young, you're doing something right. BYU fans, you're on the right track. That's all I'm going to say because AJ Dybansta is not the only one that you're going to get. You got a lot more coming in. So, anyway, lots of 4 and 5 star talents on the rise for BYU basketball. even G League level prospects. So let's talk about this. Players with pro upside, recruits who want, serious college development and they want exposure to NBA scouts. Well, Kevin Young's representation he he has ties to these NBA scouts because he's worked with them before. I just think all this is massive. I think all this is massive. We've seen recent recruit commitments in Xavier Staten, Chamberlain Burgess, who's a four-star wing from Utah, so they also recruit in-state as well. Dean Rucker, four-star wing in Utah. KJ Perry, top JUCO recruit in the country. That's saying a lot when you can go out and get the number, like highly ranked top five at different levels. So you're recruiting JUCO, you're recruiting G League, you're recruiting high school, and that's what you want to do when you're building teams in college basketball because depth is important there. Um, Abdullah Ahmed from the G League, which, like I said, Kevin Young played a major factor in there because there is a new rule that if you're not playing in the G League, you can go back to college if you still have eligibility. So this is the guy, Abdullah Ahmed. He's played in the pros already. He's coming back to play for BYU. You got to think these G League guys are going to come back in and dominate, and you have one coming in for next year. Going to be massive. Keep an eye out for that name for your basketball program next year. So, one of the most compelling parts that I see of BYU's basketball future is obviously the G League and NBA connections and Kevin Young's experience in the G League. He knows how to recruit these top prospects. He knows how to develop them into NBA players. He's built relationships with scouts, agents, and really NBA front offices because, like I said, he's worked with them. And that means BYU can offer realistic pro pathways to elite talent, I guess you would say. Something many college programs can't. You see a lot of these big programs like Gonzaga, great college basketball program, but you don't really see them like producing much NBA level talent other than Chet Holmgren, which I don't really think Gonzaga recruit or I don't think Gonzaga really elevated his game much because I think he would have been drafted straight out of high school if he had the opportunity to because of his unique size and stuff. BYU, you're turning these really normal players into NBA caliber players who are getting looks from these NBA front offices. And this matters more than ever now because, like I said, going back to these rules, the NCAA rules are giving players more flexibility because recruits want exposure and development. BYU is pretty much a launch pad for players who want to maximize their pro chances because of Kevin Young, solely because of him. And it's very unique. And you won't really see that anywhere else in college basketball. So I think you're you're in a really good spot there. So finally, the future is fun. I know this video is all over the place, but there's real energy around BYU athletics. Football brings the star recruits, exciting quarterback talent on the rise, and incoming Big 12 potential, top team in the Big 12, top spender in the Big 12, which is massive. Basketball brings pro caliber coaching, elite recruits, national vision, which is, again, big. Recruiting trending upwards for really all the programs. I can't get into baseball too much because I don't really know much about the baseball program. Hard to find much about it because where we live, it's hard to really watch much college baseball because it's not really televised around here. But anyways, the NIL, you're competing with the top tier teams in the country or top tier programs in the country. Culture is strong and it's just going to get stronger as you start to get these guys in. You can feel it. BYU's not, they're no longer really building. This is, they're the real deal now. You're seeing that. It's coming very soon, sooner than you think. Cougar fans, you're gonna love this because buckle up. It's gonna be a fun ride. It's gonna be a fun ride in these next few years. So, like I said, I know this video was all over the place, but I really wanted to make this because BYU athletics has really caught my eye. Really, the past week when I really sat down and think about it or thought about it, because I've watched every single BYU football game this season and all the basketball games so far. It's exciting. It is very exciting. So, like I said, any BYU fans watching this, please give some intel on this video. If I missed anything, please let me know about that. Um, I'd love to hear feedback because I want to know how to improve these videos or what to change in these videos because we're just trying to get this thing started from the ground. I'm working with minimal equipment right now, but we're trying to find a way. So, yeah, thank you to all the BYU fans out there. Um, and please welcome me with open arms because I will be at a game in Provo, probably basketball and football next year. I'll be at a game in Provo. It's like one of my dream spots to go. So anyways, BYU athletics, you're on the rise. Very bright future. Yeah, stay tuned for the next few videos because we cover a lot of college football here, cover a lot of college, really athletics in general, and much more BYU content coming. So hope everybody has a good night or a good day whenever you're watching. And yeah, consider subscribing if you enjoyed this. Peace.